당좀 저게 저게 대주기 류딘디 톱대비기 딘델야 하는 저게 겨와치마 다다미고 보토야기 아니 규사야다 아니 야 아니 겔레 타르바다 탐지킴 고보토야 된도 냠nen디 야부치고 그래스 냠nen디 야부치긴 세베 취지 취주긴 선배기다 되냐기 삼바디 숙심부 깨고 그래스 세지데 지나다디 야부께야 아니 지금 저기 탑람들이야 근데 내게 삼노 야부 깨마도바는 될야 가르섬 땅으로서나 어다는지 대화되고래 농화되고 말에 심지어 탐지 찍바래 라야 대화되고 농화되고 말 제산당 대화되바다 대화제 주비야당 농화되니 세야리야 근데 탑람들 가르려서는 최 코나마도 최념내지네 디기 주비야다 농화세마도 탑딜에 하지요 말에서 최 코나라라려 말에서 두 삼당 거래스 디네 삼당에도 어다 디 최념내 지역보도 선배들이 선발기리에서 지루하다. 근데 지금 주님은 지역어디 저 하나를 말해서 하거나 야 지금 대딩 냠내딩이 지투기 남미나 선배게 삼당에도 다지 냠는지 투구리에서 다그 가르선의 튕긴 자산 사도에 지이게네 기회 신에 대한 랑용원의 류된 자산 대주기리는 톱되버래 대자다 긴 자산 튕긴 자산 상대버래 이 투구리에 선배게 도치는 투구리에 재산이 투구에 선배게 된 뭐가지고 되게 삼당을 해서 나야 지금 투구리에 삼거리네 당은 저 가브리엘이야 아다데 로제마디와 개와치마디와 지하고 개와하고 선링 왔어야 돼 아직 로제마디와 두고 전 다와 제마 두고 나 상이디와 두고 선배게 삼로 여번나 된 삼도는 되네기다 다들아지에 되면메디 레롤리도 디가야게 된다려야 안 가라 삼당으로서는 어다 뉴르도 주보마도 안지기 마루 바라들라 내나서 강아 채바이나 주요고 그렇게 말해 되네 아지 시소에네 고가브라고 말지 경침벌라서 인자 다되는 염려지 고래에서며 도시는 삼당 고래에서 도시는 삼다바이나 능아주 된주기 된델이야 안지게 가서 탈바 탐지기 먹고 혼주비하기 최념는 지역이 되냐기 뒷마디 아니 야보시기 두그래에서 이게 답람들도 삼당을 해서 나도 내님보다 가서 디시주가 디슈로
Good afternoon. So this morning we looked at that how to further come to recognize the preciousness of this rebirth. That this is something of that is both rare but of remarkable potential, and independence then on coming to recognize its great value, we develop the wish to strive to fulfill its potential, to take its essence. In other words, to create the causes that will lead to further excellent rebirths, as well as the causes that lead to liberation and enlightenment. And moreover, we looked at the four states of mind to cultivate so as to develop a deep and abiding determination to do so, a deep and abiding determination to take the very essence of this life. So the first point was to recognize that I want to be happy. I only want to be happy. I don't want to experience even the slightest of problems or difficulties, and this is the case for all beings. And as that is the case now, and it is the case for all beings, it has been the case for all lifetimes. But yet I suffer. Yet I'm always on the precipice of potentially falling into the calamity that is the lower realms. So none of the ordinary methods that people employ lead to happiness, except if I were to cultivate the Dharma within. That alone is the unmistaken method to attain lasting happiness. And building on that, one asks oneself, can I do this? Is it beyond me? And this then is the second point, to recognize that it is not beyond my capacity. I very much have the qualities that are required to cultivate the varying minds of the Dharma within. I met a spiritual teacher who has confidence in me, because the spiritual teacher has recognized that I possess these freedoms and endowments. Therefore, it is within my capacity. And then the third and the fourth point together is the recognition, but I must not delay, I must not procrastinate. I mustn't allow myself to continue to live under the delusion that this rebirth is not so remarkable. I will have another just like it. This is a mistake. Do not delay for a future life that may well not be as good as this. Moreover, within this life, don't allow yourself to be overcome by the delusion that thinks, I have time. Death will come. That is certain. But we have no idea as to the means or when it will come. We could meet with an accident today. We could have a terminal illness that's just waiting diagnosis. We do not know our situation. So I need to start right now. And it's through the cultivation of these points that we develop a determined and sustained motivation to strive for liberation from suffering.
가소래 단주 리디 외송하다 대저 된 차와 공부하다 안에 다시 니아가와 공부해서 삼로 디레당 도시네 다디 아주 냠는 제디 다 디슈와 디레다 디딩은죠
of this chapter on taking the very essence or coming to recognize or take the essence of this precious human rebirth. We've looked then at the three principal outlines. The first one was identifying that we have achieved these freedoms and endowments, recognizing that we have done so. And secondly, what we looked at last time is contemplating the great importance, the great value of these freedoms and endowments. And now, this weekend, we've concluded looking at this, the final outline, contemplating the difficulty of finding the freedoms and endowments. Returning to the text, so in the published book, the bottom page 64, and in the handout, the bottom of page 74, the mind become. Oh, can I cover it? Okay. The samna part.
Samna, and the Garjeresne, some Lu Kuchewa, the Garshepata, some say.
Yes, you read the first sentence. The mind becomes subdued if you contemplate the topic from various points of view. You should contemplate in the manner described above.
고소 최념는 제게 삼로디 숙세 용거래 쿠체와 용거래스 제자들이자 날시에 받아 삼스 디니엘에 양수 셰소하다 다주 니아가와 다주에서다 다주 리딘사다 다주기 된자와래 안 다주기 니아가와래서 안데서도 셰송 안델이야 안데지 루마 시게베 시게바 나라데네 송여를 죄죄 나라데네 송여를 안데다데 대주쇼게 안에 기시보다에 되는 송여를세데 금천데네 규숑 마보나 송여를세데 다딘 도시네 게 권나소스네 삼로 나소코네 저기 금천 망부고네 삼다시고데 데네 삼다바이나 안지 소소야 삼로다 오다디 지 계치모르도 와선 바다디 제우도 셈비게 삼로야 안에 가솔 되니기 듬버 숙체야다 제도기 되니기 듬버 숙체리게 해서다 로쿠시와 중에 제상 알셔바다는 디니엘야 셰바나진도 삼당고래 해서지.
So this is excellent meditation advice from Lama Tsongkhapa. He says we should contemplate in the way explained above. So that's referring to the three outlines that cover this entire topic. So recognizing that we've achieved these 8 freedoms and 10 endowments. Moreover, they have great value. That it's independence on these that we can, this basis that we can achieve liberation and enlightenment. But this isn't the third outline, something to take for granted because they are difficult to find. So this is the way that's been presented, and we should reflect on those 3 points. And the way we should reflect is if you contemplate the topic from various points of view. So this is meditation advice to apply to this and all chapters in the Dharma, or chapters in the text, in that one needs to meditate in the way that is presented in the teachings and in the texts, and do so repeatedly over a sustained time, over a sustained period. And as one does so, one gets ever more familiar with the topic. It becomes ever more ingrained. And in this way, as you become more familiar with it, you will investigate with your own ideas, your deepening understanding. So not your own ideas, from your deepening understanding. And this will help you investigate from various points of view. So by repeating this process again and again, one will be able to investigate from varying points of views. And in this way, this will lead to a deeper transformation of one's mind. They're coming to not only intellectually understand the topic deeply, but it will transform your way of thinking. And in this way, one's very life becomes entwined with the Dharma. So this is excellent meditation advice. Okay. And moreover, the text also mentioned other references, such as the Kadampa masters, such as Buddha and the Bodhisattva's way of life. As one studies more broadly, reads more broadly, then those other texts also provide insights and further ways to analyze.
Yumche mangbo de su samdama na ngashe ban samdang goreje. Da deza menu na sene denege samdama to wena garche goreso da. Denege samdama to ba de bene odo shung dinar dine songyor dinar dine songyor lama dige de songyor di songyor. Ane yumche ro sam mangbo raji dushine samdama to ba ina ane garche gire lamna da deza menu na syajo.
But if this sounds a little bit overwhelming for one, Lama Tsongkhapa continues, if you cannot manage this much,
and denege jachimo tamutum nane garche goresna that do some down reje danju gyungo jidabu imba se that danju luden sedi kanishimba sedi dan kisi dan boy shuba naje dawa gedan jojo jusan luden dela danju luden lagi esaji on denege hago wa je gores danju luden mo jidabu imba denanda danju luden da dine danju luden de denchimbu imba samdade negabdan tardo gone denchilu samdan gores negabsedo hada migo wa tobala 엔텐델이야 유 아니 지게 사투고레스 네네 타르독세데 탈바다 탐지기면 고마토 받아야 엔덴주리니 디데네 투고레스 배 디니 삼당고레 디 삼다데 뉴뉴샤로와 제가 다주리데샤데 가서 또 다와게나 저 주사리디데 사지 뭐송 다 다주리딘 된저와 임바 가래라네 다주리딘 데라데네 아니 내가 온디고 봐 투고레 타도 탈바다 탐지기면 고마나 투고레 사지 두시네 된쳐와 있습니다. 근데 니에가 임바 삼다나 그래서는 유단 지부권에 니에가 수도 삼다오레스 가서 유권에 니에가 있나 가래라나 유디 안직 단주리든 토발라 유 진바다 수준 쇠발라 소바 어드 전주다 몰람지마메 봐 근데 제 다바고 고래 디제디 갈카고르 와서 유권에 두시네 어두시네 삼다오레스 다디 뉴뉴로 샤로다 변 갸치모 삼다 마tum나 디 삼다는 되게 해서다.
If one finds this a little overwhelming, if you cannot manage this much, then subsume those topics under these points. The first being, under these 3 points, the first being what the nature of this life of freedoms and endowments is. So this actually refers to the first of the major outlines, coming to identify or recognize that we've achieved these freedoms and endowments, recognizing that as a human being, I've not only been born freed of the lower realms, but I've met the Dharma. Not only have I met the Dharma and the spiritual teacher, I have the mental capacity to understand and so forth. So in this way, come to recognize what a remarkable opportunity we have gained with this rebirth. So that's the first point. Then the second, how it is so meaningful in terms of temporary and final goals. So this was covered last week in the published book. It was the last paragraph just before the start of this outline, starting in that way. So just before the outline contemplating the difficulty of finding them, there it was presented that this life is so meaningful in terms of the temporary and final goals, with the temporary goals being, in this life we can create the causes for further excellent rebirths as a human or as a god. And not only that, but we can create the causes that will lead to liberation and enlightenment. So all of that is possible. So this was covered in the handouts on the top of page 72. Then the third of these key points that Lama Tsongkhapa is mentioning, how difficult it is to obtain from the point of view of cause and result. So this is about to be covered in a little more detail, but it comes down to attaining this life is so difficult because of how difficult it is to accumulate the causes. In particular, ethical restraint is required, but in addition, generosity, patience, joy, perseverance, and prayer.
이제 규다 제비고는 유고는 예사. 제비서에 뒤로 당한 가서 주반나지 기시 당한 쪽에 지게 겨웠대 된로다 미시베나 에 직미디 쇼 중요요. 나 미나네게 하다 단주율이 토에 뉴요레 샤서 삼다는 제보디뉴 제비고네다 깔래가고 임바 삼다나데. 단지사 유고네다 제비고네 예가와임 안데네 삼다디 삼다나데 더디시 제자디 당한 쪽에 다주 뭐소와 다주 된쳐와 안에 다주 예가와 세데 다곰 세데 다디곰나디 디삼다야 돼 디삼다 제산 다주 된쳐 다주 세데 다주 다와기다 주와 주세비를 딘디레 사데 안데 안에 예가와 임바디 아 된쳐와 임바디 리딘 델야 나라다 미고 보토비 유튜브 그래 탈바다 탐제히 보고 보토에게 냠렌지 두고어레 세데 모두 삼다데 다 제비고네 니에가와 세디 유 안에 지게 단주린 토발라 유디데시 셰바나지 수림 남바다 보송 데네 짐발라 소바다 수리 쇠바다 준주 안에 지금 몰람 디마베바 참자와 데레된 촉고자 데네게 유튜브에 깔려가고 뉴요에자다 유고네 니에가와 제비고네 니에가와 세데 아주 문제들에 미다 근로치나 미디베 뉴뉴 미나네야 다 단주리딘 다와기다 저 주세리딘 베 뉴뉴레에서 두삼다데다 니아가와 이 말씀 두치네 디삼다데다 람림 기타 도르디 다디디 다주 뭐 송와세야 다주 된쳐와세야 다주 니아가와 곰세디 다 디삼야 다야다데다.
This third point, how difficult it is to obtain from the point of view of cause. So this was in terms of how difficult it is to accumulate all the required causes for such a remarkable rebirth, and in terms of results. So it's looking at it from then the perspective of the results of amongst the vastness, the innumerable numbers of sentient beings, how few are humans. And amongst humans, how few could be said to have a precious human rebirth. And amongst those, how few are really making use of this precious human rebirth. So therefore, these 3 points that Lama Tsongkhapa says we can meditate on. The first is relating to that first outline, which is to recognize that we've achieved these freedoms and opportunities. And the second was recognizing their great value, which is that we can achieve the causes for further good rebirths and liberation and enlightenment itself. And then the third point also relates to the third outline, which is from the point of view of cause as well as result, that a rebirth such as this is very difficult to achieve. The causal, from the perspective of cause, was how few people are living an ethical life, as well as have a generous outlook and patience, and so forth. And then from the perspective of result, just how few beings there are who are utilizing their precious human rebirth.
Lamrim Yamlen Jesse, that Dampong, that Jiki gave in the Com said, D. Chela Caracomurasene, the net Daju near Daju Ludenda, Daju Dunchava, Dajinia Com said, and the one man, 기부 중요람 일이 보고 되는 징계람이 되는 신별람 일이 보고 시로와 제사당은 저기 대신바 일마 손나다 림바 니도 사와래 제사다 나봉아주다 지게 기회신인지서 검세 돌뒤로 뉴르시가 삼다데 기회신인데 된다 편다 맞대나 안에 소소를 경험을 해봐 삼다 아니 기회신이 구소도 유연제 대바께 되네 기회신의 소소를 취해된바 그린 침보를 했으면 그거제 나지 되네게 삼다네 라마야 이 균도 로 남야 기주메 삼백에 두신 삼다의 기회신인 검수지다 디삼 이네 삼다의 기회신인 검수시 뭐 돌디라 차기도와 안디나진다 디월을 당한저 다준이야가와 다사 다주 류된 다주 된저와 근데 다준이야가 검수도 다디셔야들이 제사 다와스 다주 류디세 다와기다 조주사위 류딘데레 데 된델 된저와 디 된델이야 안직 라다미고 와도에 다 타바 탐지 게메도다 남차사 냠네지 투구어레서 어디니게 삼다 디니야가 와서야디 유고는 예가와를 대부고는 예가와에서 디니게 삼다인데 뉴뉴를 차서 되는 것들 두시래 예신인데서 고미아티 디네 고미아지 되는 단주육 류딘 고투스 고미아지베네 디니게 삼다 뉴뉴를 시 삼다지베 안도 디니게 가만 가시 나래야 디니가 삼다 두에 차도와
Thus far in the text, we've looked at one primary chapter or outline, and that is on relying on the spiritual teacher. And we now are concluding the second primary meditation topic, that of precious human rebirth. And this precious human rebirth had contained the three outlines of identifying that a precious human rebirth has been attained, its great value, and its the difficulty in attaining it. What will follow will be the various trainings in accordance with the various capacities of beings. The trainings specific to that are shared with practitioners of initial capacity, followed by the training shared with practitioners of intermediate capacity, and then finally the trainings which are unique to those practitioners of greatest capacity. So what we've looked at thus far in terms of the two meditation topics is firstly in terms of the spiritual teacher. So to mention it now in brief, call to mind the benefits of relying on a spiritual teacher and the faults of not doing so. Then one recalls thereafter his many good qualities in terms of his physical behavior, verbal communication, and his mind and activities, and this in order to generate faith or trust in him. Then the third outline in relying on the spiritual teacher is recalling his tremendous kindness so as to generate respect. And the result of this meditation, so the fourth part of reflecting on the benefits of relying on the faults of not doing so, generating faith and respect, is to come to the determination to not see faults in one's spiritual teacher, and thereby to see or to receive all the advice one receives, the teachings one receives, as personal instruction to cultivate within. That's the outcome to come to there. Then one comes to the second topic, and that is to reflect on the preciousness of the human rebirth. So when one has meditated on the qualities of the teacher, this then is the first topic that one is being guided in to meditate on, that he is guiding in to meditate on. And this has those three outlines. Recognizing one has the freedoms and endowments, their great value. In other words, they are the basis to achieve liberation and enlightenment. But they are very difficult to achieve from both the perspective of cause and effect. So that is all in terms of the meditation topics that we've looked at thus far. And it doesn't take more than just a few minutes to reflect briefly on them.
데네게다 조조 고미야지 다데 단주글리딘 델리아 최냠네 주바냠네 지긴세 베삼다다 간주 두스르도와 나데네 데다야 데네 델리아 내갑다 가서 여수제 데네 지대를 참바레 응아르 셰바네 랑바 랑 랑라 고모스네 지들 삼바스데 소소라랑기 뉴비 강조게 삼라가제 땅 다데데지 더디디 삼라 개체모 담아둠나 삼라 디다네 디그리에스 대신에 레셔서 다중을 소와다 된치로다 아니 가서 니어가와 수 삼다데 디시리에스 단딜레도 소소 삼다토이나 소소기 뉴비 강조 지들 삼바레사 델레 또 개체와 삼다는 개체와 딜레 개체와는 개체와 소소기 뉴비 강 투두기다 그 금체 가제 마무 삼다토이네 이점이 삼단 디그리에스 지들 삼바레 참바레스 나르 셰바니 랑라 공보스 니마디 셰샤바디마 안 소소가제 젠 투두치네 젠제네 안 소소기 젠 투시 두시는 공고래 제래다.
Paragraph concludes with, you should take up each of the points explained above in a way that suits you and meditate on them. So here we have these 3 points that are mentioned, and meditate on them in accordance with your own capacity. Again and again, reflecting on these points, generating an ever-deepening familiarity with them.
유고는 예가와나 제비고는 예가와래라로하다 지자다 당보 단주기 밀리면 유고는 예가와미 김제 가래 선다 예가와디쇼 당보 데라 유고는 예가와니 지르데로 잠식 토발라야 추즘로서 베게와 남덕 나직 제거 바당 개발도 단주 창화 토발라 추즘 넘버 다베 시송 지소기 조체 몰람 지마 메베 삼조와 소 아니 개사 멍보시 괴나서 아니 어디 그거래서 안도 디바도 로션이.
We've just been introduced to a way to look at the difficulty in obtaining the freedoms and endowments from the perspective of cause and effect. So now Lama Tsongkhapa presents that in a little more detail. Contemplate the difficulty in obtaining the freedoms and endowments from the point of view of the causes. Generally speaking, even to attain a mere fortunate rebirth, you need to cultivate one of the unmistaken virtues such as ethics. In particular, to attain the complete freedoms and endowments, you need to cultivate the many roots of virtue such as upholding a foundation with correct ethics, reinforcing it. Oh, did I read this one? This was read. Reinforcing it through generosity and so on, and maintaining a connection by means of. So just to say here, the words we have as pure. It's correct translation is the word that's pure, but it's not the meaning. It's a less common meaning, and it should be correct or unmistaken. So those for both times where we've had pure as in virtue or ethics should be correct ethics or unmistaken ethics. And maybe a stainless Geshe will explain it's also not ideal by means of prayers.
Dendro sam namna miri kewe ne be chike chöche kogameba momo masangwa dishi denegi ganga yedi ina de miri kebare ina da dawa ketan jo jusa de chasan sayo marwa hali kebe ne be chik denirwa da nyora choboda sanga sinda denegi ganga yedi ga lati kebe na den ko denju chago marwa dendro sam de chago dendro ra kebare ko san la da miri kebarwa 지사데 덴조 잠시 토발라양소 제산 덴주기 밀리 멤버 덴조 잠시 토발라야 타다미 고마지기 토 밀렘발라 아니 가고스네 추름라서 베게와 남다 나지고 그래서 개와직 가서 추름라서 베게 개와 즉 차산 싸움도면 된 배낭한테 되지 진바 추름 진바 수여바 준주 아니 몰람 지마메 봐서야 돼 디스 차상 싸모도 왜냐 제 추림로서 봐 나지 나가지 싸고 그래 나직스 나가직스 그래 되네 나직 남다 남직 나직스 개완 남다 나직자고 그래서 되네게다 고고래서 답변이 수rim송고 그래서 누가 이순이 예 대비 수rim송고 그래 수림송하지고 그래서
contemplating the difficulty in obtaining the freedoms and endowments from the point of view of the causes, generally speaking, even to attain a mere fortunate rebirth. So mere fortunate rebirth we should understand as to be reborn as a human or as a god. It's in the high realms of fortunate rebirth, but not necessarily a precious human rebirth. It continues, you need to cultivate one of the correct or unmistaken virtues, such as ethics. So this then refers to the causes that are required for rebirth in the higher realms. And such as then refers to, whilst ethics is the principal cause to attain rebirth in the higher realms, the additional qualities such as generosity, patience, and so forth are also required to attain rebirth in the higher realms.
수림라 소바 추진나 진바단 쇠바 준리 디나네다 아주 수림담바다 송아지고 그래 나 직송 디니지 송 디나네다 수림송아 찍고 직송고 그래서 제가 디네 인자다 디니게 된저게 발라 디니시고 그래서
Ethics is specifically mentioned because it is the indispensable cause to attain rebirth in the higher realms. But a good rebirth in the higher realms needs to be qualified by various other good causes, such as generosity and patience.
에다 수림남다 개완남바다 봐서 개완남다스는 개와 약부시 미개와데 미개삼문단 제와 매바서 되는 저기 인지바지 따와이나 미 지맛 당고할때 베니지 그 질야 델리아 지맛 따두갑라 소소야 추지 라야게 된다야 어찌게 소소야 케벤지 라야게 된다라 지맛 따와이나 난지 지맛 남다라 제가 말 가르스네 델리아 랑리 젠리게 그 소리 착백이 꾸내나지 착백다 제도는 착백 꾸내나지 소소기 진바시 따두고로 제가 디 지맛 남다라 제가 말와 남 개완 남다세 니나시 셴실이야 직 진바시 따위네 다 칼라르 제베나 델리아 직 소담 따베 지 동나고된 요라신 직대베네 아직 디 남나라 지금 님들 개화만 오실까 소리 디버시 사용으로 제가 개완 남다로 제거 말아 디나신 제사 디네 자당한 저 개완 남다 세디 사이도 근데 소수기 직 진바시 파직 셴 진바시 따위네 소소리야 디수기 렌다 년다다 가야 저 매바지 한삼 코로나 팬나서 제베네 남다세 제거로 제가 내 야부시세요 제거로 내 야부시 남다세야 돼.
So this term we have translated as pure virtues. So the word pure is correct. It's what the Tibetan says, and to be really clear, the Tibetan says completely pure. But this can be understood at many different levels, and it's at a very simple level, not at a. So therefore, as the translator, pure isn't so good. Rather, Geshe says as alternatives to use correct or unmistaken, because pure can have the meaning of without the influence of the afflictions at all. And that is not the meaning here. So the meaning of pure or unmistaken or correct here is that when one accumulates such virtuous causes, they are done without manifest or apparent or evident influence of the afflictions. So it doesn't mean pure as in the motivating ethical, the motivating virtuous mind is free of the afflictions. In that way, the mind would be pure, but rather that it is freed of manifest or evident afflictions. For example, when practice to take the virtue of practicing generosity, when giving something with the hope to receive something in return, it's a practice of generosity and it's virtuous, but it's far from being unmistaken or correct virtue, or as the text says, pure. It's because it's tainted by a manifest or evident affliction, wanting something in return. Or another illustration, when giving food or money to someone who's impoverished, a correct way to do it, so the correct virtuous way to do so, is to ease the suffering of this impoverished person. The mistaken way to do it would be whilst either explicitly or implicitly giving them a lecture on what all the mistakes they've made to end up where they are. That, whilst looking down on someone, whilst one may be practicing generosity, it's certainly far from pure. It certainly is a mistaken way to engage in virtue. So therefore, the way we should understand this term pure here is that it is free of manifest or evident afflictions.
네 주름 남다 지게 개와 남다 시대 배능하는 중에 소주에게 주름지 소지미에서 비다 주소 맞게 맞게 송와이나 송와데라 다 연구로 왔대 배능하는 중에 미망오직 염도에 직sem제로 쇠야르시네 배미상부 인도도제 미생게 미상부도 그 디벌 전부도 와서 미 뛰어나야지도 한 소마죠 되니게 군에 라지 아땡게 소주미에서 소마죠 손야죠로 와 디 소마죠 숨고할 때 남다 차되면 와 그래서는 소소야 안 뛰어나야다 지기 미생기 뛰어나야 된다를 삼다체네 소식이 담년달을 차지네 디 내갑대 고심지 소주부 송화 잠지 채고 됐음지 소주부 송화래데 이내 손에디 소소야 유가소래 담년달이 차지 디 송화래마도 개와치마 그 개와디바 디디부 동안 연구를 삼지 삼단 숨고 말와 제가 디송아디 수림 송화래베선 소주부 송화래베선 송화래데 이내 남다 소요 말와 다 거신데 디 꿀롱한테 마선 소소야 지게 가소래 년다 요야게 차배 꾸냐 라지 송화를 책으로 와 얘네 먹고 연구를 와다 배는 아주 얘네게 미치서 지소알이야 지금 미먹어야 지 상부인 도도 제다 너너면 내가 딜지야 돼 얘네 먹고 연구를 와 어디 얘네 제웬 지선 개화를 마수에 같은 개화들이 되네 개화 남다 차요 말그 꿀론이야 미개화 차되어 와 녀모 되샤죠 근데 개화 남다 다 봐서 말해서 제자다 남다 세디 디 개화 주비 갑라 아니 녀모 받아 맞아와 남세디 녀모 받이 다 세디 녀모 매봐 두신의 개화 수림 소화는 수림 남다 개화 남다세 제자다 저기 개화 치마 미유고 봐 먼저 고방 토에 규디라 수림 남다 고래 마도 데니기 소설이야 안식 담냐라 착비 왕기 내가 좀 심지어 소마죠 소화디 디기 밀려고봐 톱두고 말해서 그러다 밀려도 수림을 되네 밀려도비 규차고 말해서 제가 밀려도비 규차 받을 수림 남다 고래 데니기 녀모 받아 맞아 가지고 그래서 그러다
Geshe is saying here about this term pure, it fits also with where in the chapter we've had pure before. So commenting specifically here about pure virtues and in a few lines on pure ethics, but we've had the same term before earlier, so Geshe now is continuing to explain this term. We should, because the term that's used here is in Tibetan namdak, but it can be in this context better understood as young duck, because it's not to have the confusion that pure means completely free of, as in not a trace left, such as in the continuum of an Arya being. It can mean that, this word, but not here. So what it means here is better as correct or excellent or unmistaken. So another illustration of, now in terms of ethics before about generosity, was when one makes, for example, a big deal to others about how one doesn't kill. And one is making a big deal out of it because you want to be known as an ethical person. You want to have this reputation. So whilst then one may intentionally not kill, one's motivation is far from pure. So this is the meaning of the usage of the term pure here. And this is actually very common in society, in that when we are before people in general, we present ourselves in a particular way. But when with those that we are very familiar with, then we are more ourselves. So we have this public face and we have our private behavior. This is not ideal. But the point here is that when one engages in virtuous activity or generous activity or patient activity, but it is tainted by the afflictions, this severely reduces the quality of the virtue accumulated. So in the context of slightly further on, we have the term pure ethics. So if one is being ethical, but with a tainted motivation, for example, making a big deal about, I'm not going to kill this being because I'm so ethical, wanting to be seen in a particular way, that, whilst it is a virtuous activity, the quality of the virtue is weakened by the evident affliction. Therefore, that virtue lacks strength to propel a rebirth to the higher realms. So this is how we should understand the word pure, as free from manifest afflictions, evident afflictions. And they just need to be evident to you. They don't need to be expressed. But to that level of coarseness of affliction, one needs to accumulate virtue free of that.
Nam se di shenda chi da se di da chi pinanga zu duglo ne jaba da ba se da se zangma cha ba jaba di yo ba di pa me ba zangma cha de nam se nam jaba number da ba lam na jaba number da ba lam na nam se de ge jaba sha jaba zo ba sha di ba da so ba se zo ba jaba de number da ba de se chi ru da di na shi da de nga zu nam se de number da ba la de rang xin number da ba ane lo bo yi ti me number da ba Global Yidime number Dabala, Cocktail Kukuri, Cocktail, that Nam said, Yomo, Global Yidimache, Deep Bangba, Bangba, the Mava Chava, the Daba, said Cocktail Core. The Ranshin number Daba, the Ranshin said, Ranshin Debatuba, the more Ranshin Debatuba, Nam said, Debatuba. The Debatuba, Maduba, and the Debatuba, the Mab Maduba, and the Ranshin Debatuba, number Dile Daba. This is a number said, Korongi, that the Dangan the number tapa, so you need sharing donor song, rushing number tapa, Dimalovi number tapa to core. That did dealer number namda said, the Sulumahoache, namda said you Surum Suya Kabla, Socheba Suya Kabla, so see you Kulon, Shanagi, Rala, Yonga Rayagi, Yomoba, the Nigga Majeba, and Yomoba digging number tapa said.
So this term namdak that's been translated here as pure is correct, because this is what it means. In fact, usually it should even be translated as completely pure. It can be used in a variety of circumstances. For example, when one's clothes are dirty and one therefore cleans them. One can say one's clothes are now pure from impurities. So this is a very coarse level to understand the usage of the term, just clean clothes. So this is more similar to the meaning here, just free of manifest afflictions. The way where the term is more, this particular term, so there's this other word, yangdak, which can be translated as pure, but more commonly as excellent or good. But this particular term really is only translated as pure, and it's more commonly found in two situations where it would be translated as natural purity or free from stains. Where natural purity refers to the very nature of phenomena being empty of inherent existence. So a particular phenomenon is naturally pure. It's empty of inherent or true existence. Or being free of stains refers to a true cessation. So that being free of stains, or that purity that is free of stains, is a true cessation. That's not what's meant here. It's not referring to the virtue or ethics created by someone who has attained a true cessation, nor does it refer to, in any way, the natural purity of phenomena. So that's just to give an understanding of this term.
Surim namda chi sungu gore ese dine sung tuwe na ni lada mi go wa top tu gore ese chi sung gore da dine kebar du se da denju yulu toba la sa denju ge da denju ge milu toba se da ne surim namba da ba chi sung na an denju milu top tu gore ese di top tu go ma re se da denju milu toba la an di ga la surim namba da ba sung an di ga la ya ne sha da ke wa sa gore ese je san kebar du denju ge denju changwa toba la an 수림 넘버 답이게 시송 또 마세디다 수림 넘버 답을 송 네가 하나 가르고 것은 진소 조시에서 진바다 쇠바 근데 전주티게 조시에서 디고 소서나 진바체 근데 쇠바디 전주티세 단 디원은 몰람디마메바 안 개와치마 denjuimilu 토바쇼 된데래 안 지금 라마디게 제제 라면은 최슈하고 라월쇼 sendenige 몰람자고래 에제 데니게 참바에다 denjuimilu 톱두고래 튼규리티레세 제가 제마메바 참조와 속 개자 멍보시고나 제가 데니 개와 멍보지 denjuimilu 토바라 개와 멍보고도 아가서 수림코롱 수림남바다 바지송 디가라 한진바다 쇠바다 전주에다 몰람 디마메 바 참자와 고거래제 지산지 망고시 고거래제 지산 몰람 디마메 바세다디 지산 디마메 바세디 몰람 디마메 바세디 한지데 지바레 되지나지 되지 지산 소수게 담냐다다 야보여라 삼마다와 나와는데 몰람 디마메 책이 말아 제가 진디게 몰람데야 개와치마 라다 미고 와도야다 기회 신에 되는 최슈하고 되는 라워쇼 세베 니 되는게 몰람데 책으로 봐 제가 개와치마 미데네선에 개와치마가 변조하고 신화쇼 담냐다 개라치마 라워쇼 세바는 디마메가 책이 말아 가서 데레 차비게 귀나 가서 담냐다라 차비 차바에다 되네 몰람데고로 나 게라치 뭐 차와쇼 나 변조야 뭐 차와쇼 나 미지구지 깨와쇼 몰란제바나 디다 지마메 바체가 말 디데네게 차오 뇨모바다 마데바 디마세데 뇨모바다 마데바제 안 소소라게电上 토바쇼 电데려야 안 최념을 지고 라와쇼 니 기회신에 무슨 제제 야고 중화쇼 습에 디네게 몰람자고 해서다.
Therefore, to summarize what has been presented here about ethics, in order to attain a precious human rebirth, ethical restraint is foundational because that is what is required for a good rebirth. And that ethical restraint needs to be pure from influence of the afflictions, manifest or evident influence of the afflictions. But ethical restraint is insufficient to lead to a precious human rebirth. Additional causes are required. So the text then continues. So that was looking at general, which refers to ethical restraint, the foundational cause, then continues. In particular, to attain the complete freedoms and endowments, you need to cultivate many roots of virtue, such as upholding a foundation with a correct ethics, reinforcing it through generosity and so on, and maintaining a connection by means of, let's say, excellent prayers. So in addition then to ethics, this needs to be accompanied by the other practices, developing a generous outlook, a patient approach, a joyous perseverance. These 3 plus ethics, these 4 causes are indispensable to attain a precious human rebirth. And then these need to be conjoined with prayers. So these prayers are, for example, that for life to life, to meet the Dharma, to meet my teachers, to recognize them as such, to come under their care, to strive in the Dharma, and so forth. So in other words, they are prayers that one continues one's spiritual development. And for this to come about, or maybe first of all, this term stainless. So stainless in this context doesn't mean in the context where we usually doesn't have the meaning of stainless, free from stains, the mind free from stains that we used to seeing this term. Here it has the same meaning as the meaning of the word pure, free of manifest afflictions. So stainless prayers refers to prayers free from manifest afflictions. So for example, one doesn't practice generosity so that in future lives one can be wealthy and therefore be famous and so forth. This is not the motivation with which one practices generosity, and therefore the dedication of generosity shouldn't be, I want to be wealthy in future lives so that people can like me and people can praise me and be impressed by me, etc. This is not the way. Prayers such as those are not considered stainless. So stainless should be understood as stainless from manifest afflictions, just like the word pure. And then lastly, the term here, many roots of virtue. There we go, many roots of virtue. So this refers to, we should not be sufficient with an occasional accumulation of virtuous imprints, but we need an abundance of virtuous imprints to ensure ongoing precious human rebirths.
Adine zada gyudeda bo tubayan shindu nyuwaran nawe dela pana sidude jeza dela pana debu dedu den jidan khabara nyakawa sambawo sida jeza denege gyudi so duele ya kale khabura de waso da denege gyutubala shindu ya nyuwaran nawe denege tukan nyuyure sida bene surumsunga nyuyures surumsunga nyuyure di nane ja da jige surimda 네 진바다 쇠바다 준주다 몰람 두스레 지원 유유레스 데네 인자 아니 규디 두투페 유유에서 김천 데네 삼다베나 제고 된주기 띠다 된주기 띠 지다스 지다 된주기 띠 지다 두야데야 갈야고 요 저가하고레 캬버르세데 캬버 된주기 류데디 데네 야가와레스 김천 데네시에 세워다 야가와 셈바스 제 지단 캬바라 냐가바 셈바오 세데.
This concludes with those who accomplish such causes appear to be very few. So this we can observe both in what we observe in the world, as well as perhaps when we look back at our own life. Just how difficult people find it to live within the confines of ethical restraint, or to have a truly generous outlook, patient outlook, and so forth. So we can recognize that it is very few people who seem to be cultivating these causes. And this has the consequence, therefore, having weighed this up, contemplate how difficult it is, both in general and in particular, to obtain the result that is the physical basis of a fortunate rebirth. Or as we'd normally say, this is literally the Tibetan, obtain the result that is a precious human rebirth.
Is that Simje? So much about children so on you carry your bada. So much about the children sung over Vesene, so much about Soja Majeva, some you children sung Chago Marva. So much about Soja Magic and Jorova. There's a children sung over Vesene. Sochi be surim sungur besin, sochi be surim sungagi, never yomarva. So majobata, sochi be lega majebata, surim sungwanidi, dus cabayorva. Surim sung sedu, Dangin Shen, Sochi Chebaina, Dang Gimze Samdide, Sochi Chesh, Sochi Chebaina, Digi Tebu, Mahon Bana, and the Dunga Yungres, Chezada, Dini Zangi Sochi me, said Dungai. Giwachima, Anson Gior, Chizan Anson the Kineda, Gang Ansola Tago, and Zangi, Surimsung Sochi me, some dia. The Nigum sent some dia. And Surimsung and the Chief Sochi and Shelia, New Shelia, New Ward, she's a Shelia, and Shen Ganganti or Denishin, the Aumare, say, Chicas, the Sochi me. She's not the Nigga Sochi, but the Sanji Gadan, Gagor, Sanji, and Sochi Mare, somebody. She's at the Sochi Baina, the Gumsendelia, Shen Sochi Baina. And one to get Dipasa di table and the Rangli Mon Bana, Casori, Dunga Yungo Bamase, Sochi Banashan, like Simjala, 강아테 내나서 동안 용어 차고래 안디마저 사기가 다 가고래 되네 금세 삼다제 땅이 속죄세 지금에 삼비 삼로 디니시다베나 수림 송고로 받아 수림 송저라 되네게 삼다데 삼다제 지키 속죄 마제베는 수림 송아래다 수림 송세디로와 저 속죄 수림 송세 디나진 당은 저기 지마마진 발레바다 차사디로와 김제디네 삼래 디네게 삼야 가마 저등은 제 심지어 소주메세베다 소주는 미야지 코심제 소주도 미 가땅에 sembe samdayada adadinga 지게 거우메사다 디네 삼 지당한 소주 마제바 잠려 디네게 삼라가 소주 숭금 숭고에게 윤제나 삼다 마 소주 메스마 마삼바제 삼바메나야 소마주바제 지려가 소주기려가 멤베들려가 총관나 레가레 망고여 디네 고 소주 지고 말와 제가 이내다 수름 숭고를 배서는 숭어서 샤요 말와 제자다 수름 숭의 유권불에 세디로 하다 디네게 삼다제 수름 숭한디 삼당하는 유유에자 디네 수름 숭하도 권불에 용요래 신도 용요래 해야지.
In terms of accumulating the virtue of ethical restraint, it's important to understand how one goes about accumulating such virtue. To take the illustration then of not killing. To accumulate the virtue of the ethical restraint of refraining from taking life involves a determination that I will not do it because of the suffering results that follow. If that determination is absent and one merely doesn't kill, that mere absence of killing does not mean one is accumulating the virtue of ethical restraint of not killing. One needs to have a conscious determination. I do not want to kill. And I do not want to kill for particular reasons. For example, it can be sufficient just to have one reason, such as, if I kill, I create the karma that will ripen in my own suffering. Perhaps I'll fall to the lower realms, or I'll experience many illnesses, or I will be killed in turn. I do not want to suffer, therefore I will not kill. With such a determination, when one from then on does not kill, one accumulates ethical restraint of not killing. One's determination could be deeper than that. That in addition to not wanting to suffer oneself, recognizing that taking the life of another being, that causes them to suffer. Every being, no matter what type of being it is, values their life. So therefore, for this additional reason, I will not kill. Or one may have the reason that killing is against the teachings of the Buddha. I want to live in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha, therefore I will not kill. So in brief, the mere absence of killing does not result in the ethical restraint of not killing. The determination for any one of those reasons, or more than one of those reasons, not to kill, that determination leads to the ethical restraint of not killing. With that understanding then, we can understand how rare it is for beings to actually accumulate to accumulate ethical restraint, or the karmic imprints of ethical restraint, because the mere absence of unethical behavior does not necessarily lead to the accumulation of virtue.
And the surim songa compare, then the surim songa in there, the nigga and the cabar, yakawa cabar said, this is not surim songa in the Jimbata and Yamlenjiata, Sevacomiata, Junjusomiala Sovata, Molam Yadin, Yukumbushur was, the Neza, Dinim, Denju, Mondiokova, Toyale, Denju Ludin Toyale, Galacapores, Tisanduchin, some Tavena, the Denju Yakawa, Nyakawa, the Yugune, some Nyakawa, some data to see as somewhere.
When thinking then of how difficult it is to attain the freedoms and endowments from the point of view of causes, we see that in general, to attain an excellent rebirth, one needs ethical restraint, and that is difficult. We can observe either within ourselves or what we observe in the world. It's difficult for beings to live ethically, especially intentionally so. And then so that's in general, and then in particular, that to have a fully qualified precious human rebirth, additional causes and an abundance of causes are required, generosity, patience, and so forth. And again, not just some causes, but an abundance of them. Hence, we see that from a causal point of view, it is difficult to achieve a precious human rebirth.
rik mitun ngandro namle tuete ane dero zamyang sitar nanglas ne riktun dero la tuete yang dawa kebar jeni che gombar was.
Having looked then at how it's difficult to obtain freedoms and endowments from the point of view of causes, we come to the next chapter from the point of view of the result. Contemplating the difficulty in obtaining the freedom and endowments from the point of view of the result, meditate on the fact that compared to the beings in the lower rebirths, different in kind from us, even a mere fortunate rebirth seems beyond the limits of possibility, and compared to the beings in the fortunate rebirths, the same in kind as us, those endowed with the fully qualified freedoms are extremely rare.
대저 점에 배 공부 쉬우 누용 쉬우 차고 그래서 지난다 릭 미팅 배 dunro 제반에 배 야첨부 쉬우 망부 쉬우지다 dunro 릭 망부 디나데 릭 남에 나서 해봐 되네기 디나데 배 당아들 릭 레레집에 나가서 밀에 야자 야 담바 망으로 차도요 봐 되네기 지난 디네 삼다면에 디네 가서 디네 배 시다나지 예봐 누용 쉬우지에서 시다서 나라서 rig mitun ngandro la tuete dero zamya sita na se dero zamya se de dero denju lu de member dero zamya se ta da mi zamya pe nyunyu shu jire se.
Contemplate the difficulty in obtaining the freedoms and endowments from the point of view of the result. So this is something we've discussed thus far already. Meditate on the fact that compared to the beings in the lower rebirths, different in kind from us, even a mere fortunate rebirth seems beyond the limits of possibility. Here we think of the vast number of beings in the lower realms, those that are seen by us, the animals, as well as the even vaster numbers that are unseen by us in the spirits and hell beings. Amongst all of these beings, there is such a vast quantity compared to the very few in the higher realms, and for them, trapped in these suffering realms, the mere thought of rebirth in the higher realms seems impossible, or as we've heard said from engaging in a bodhisattva's way of life, that hearing the word high realms seems almost impossible for these beings.
ngazu mi na da so da de jizan de ju ge lu den de top nie ga wa yin ba sam dang guo da jizan ngazu mi yin ba ji ba yin na ri tun de zhe la de de se da ngazu mi ro ji na ri tun bi ga mi mang bu ye ba na ne sam da wa ne de zhe la de zhe ga so re de yang da wa che ba chen de ni che xin do gon ba ro se de ba ji da den ju lu den de be ma so yu xiu ji mi mang bu ye be na ne ya si da be na da denju ludin yege midi be nyunyu resa me nyunyu resa dochine samdai dair de dinaji nya denju haru samdame ne ha rikchi ba ine ya kondo denju ludin yege ha de be masin nyunyu resa.
That previous sentence specifically about beings in lower rebirths, because they are of different kind to us. Now, and the text continues, and compared to the beings in the fortunate rebirths that are in the same kind as us, so fellow human beings as well as gods, those endowed with the fully qualified freedoms and endowments are extremely rare. So amongst human beings, and as well as amongst gods, there are very few who have the freedoms and endowments.
And another Denju Ludin said, Mintiku Gunia Kawari, Jibu Gunia Kawari, sometimes I did that, Denju Ludin Tobala, Jidang mi Ludin Tobala, Tudim Yapuch Sungu Ware, and Dima said that Denju Ludin Tobala, you Dambo Tudim Sung, Dene Jimba, Seba, Zunju, Dene, and the Jimolam. Dapjedushin Drupu War, Jazan D sometimes the Nishi Hintikala Kapo New Shuinza, that then you said the Nigi Jika Yukone, Bear Rakapu Shure, or some dying on the Dushin, Niakawa Imba. And that Jibukone Niakawa sometimes, down on the Jim Mida, Yundu Tibe, that Midi Shu, New Jazan Jibu, Tibet, New Shu. 제가 미 나네야다 denju 유리된 유게데 뉴뉴 시우레도 제가 된 제비고네 삼다베네 denju 유리된 뉴뉴 공부 시우시레도 제가 라카고레도 와스 나 유고네 예카와 나 제비고네 예카와레 세 데니지 삼다 데니게 삼다 예카와 임바 삼다데 데디 삼다비게다 닝보 주름제 가르고스는 제가 다랑게 유리된 denju 유리된 자침부 시우시레도 와스 是杂情不一般的，也搞吧，那个语国的也搞吧，的这边国的也搞吧，因吧，三单比，做的，那等俺投这个旅店的，他杂情不休息的话，他天天来样的，给我你们这嘛头的，他们都小糊涂，身边的，身边给我来送的，你们家的地来送。
Therefore, we can now include in our reflection that this rebirth we've achieved is difficult to obtain from the point of view both of the cause as well as the result. The cause was primarily that of ethics, but ethics that needs to be free of manifest affliction, as well as abundant in a number of imprints, and then not ethics alone, but ethics marked by generosity, patience, choice, perseverance, and prayers, all of which need to be abundance in number, as well as accumulated free from manifest afflictions. So therefore, to accumulate such causes is difficult to do. And we know from either looking within or looking without, we can see how difficult it is to accumulate such causes. And also we reflect from the perspective of the results, where we see that when we compare humans to animals, for example, how few humans there are in relation to the vast number of animals. Moreover, amongst humans, just how few have precious human rebirths. So in this way, from both the perspective of cause and result, we see just how difficult it is to obtain a precious human rebirth. And then again, the purpose of this reflection, this important point that one concludes with, is to value what we've achieved, to not see that this life as ordinary, not to therefore take it for granted, see it as commonplace, but recognize that this is something I have just this once. Let me make the most of it. Let me not waste another moment. And that is the determination or the strength of mind to conclude the meditation with.
안델이야는 기시 돌베 순가르송이라서는 기시 돌베 딜라 난치르 제발레 난치르 제베 니 최신 군대 나장내 중스 시송하다르 임베 베바르자오스.
Lama Tsongkhapa then concludes this chapter with, Geshe Dolpa laid great emphasis on this. He said that all other Dharma is brought forth by this understanding. As this is so, you should make an effort accordingly.
Geshe Dolpa 가르쳐 말하는 딜라 난치르 제베스 딜라 난치르 제베스 딜라 세당한테 단주 류된데서 다 단주 류된데 대시 셰바는 다주 응고선에 된체와 임바삼 다다한테 다주디 니에가와 임바 두 진에 삼균이야 오삼다 nen쳐서 되네 야네 양두셔 삼다위 안 가르리스 최군디 나장서데 최군세데 냠내 이름바 현다 되게 다디디 슈긴체데 파 레용고레서 or 최군세도 제사다 먼저 된주 류딘데 된 차와다 될래 규다 지부고니 니가와도 야고 섬다 되니 라초에 있음이야 지제도와 선배 섬다이도 되니 최군 되니 갈리 그랬으나 당아 된텔이야 냠는지 맛있는 탑 미누스 냠는 제고도 선배게 냠는지 양이 dum바리요 그래제 되니 냠는지 양이 dum바디 단나 장 봤어 수장 내발에서 단 냠는지 양이 dum바디 레어도 된 냠는지 고주용을 냠는지 용고래제 단 냠는지도 다디 니바들에서 단 냠는지도 되는 거라는 줄라 냠는지 공부 미고 공부 치료 개와치마 냠는지여도 냠는 제바다 디 개와치마 하다 미고 원토비 뉴스하고 어쩌다 마음바다 하다 미고 투고래서 아니 양증한 쪽에 냠는 데때나 탈비고 뭐 토야지도 잉이중 삼바지에 되는 공묘도 안델야 탈비 잉이중 삼바지에 자주 가슬람 귤레기야다 데라 근데 진바다 수름라서바 쇠비 냠내지야다 다음에 봐도 비셔라 냠내 림바디기 두신이야 용고래세 제가 나장고래세 디기 수 슈울마서나 저게 된주류디 된체와 삼다 된주류디디 아니 규나 지벽군에 니가와 삼당에도 되네기 삼당비기 두신 삼려고 당에도 되네야 디 견제네 된들이야 최냠내지에 된유기 듬바지 최냠내지 된유기 듬바디 견제는 최냠내지 냠는 제바 될래 때네 개와치마 하다 미고와 토야다 되네 탈바다 탐제키면 람냠는 귤레긴 뭐 원용도 폐 중거래서 지상 군세 최군세디 다 되네기 냠는 제야 되네기 디개와치마 하다 미고와 토야기 냠는 제야 탈바 탐제키면 고와 람냠는 차사 될래 때네 두신의 내용을 해서 송거래
Geshe Thubten laid great emphasis on this. The term "this" then refers to this topic here, this topic of a precious human rebirth. Its great value, but it's the difficulty in obtaining it, and therefore its rarity. So this topic, this Kadampa Geshe placed great emphasis on, and the reason for doing so is then Lama Tsongkhapa presents in the next sentence. He said that all other Dharma is brought forth by this understanding. In other words, by recognizing just the great value of what we've achieved, and that it is not something to see as commonplace, but something to value and therefore to make the most of, one then has the strength of mind and the focus of mind to engage in all the varying topics of the Dharma. Because the reason this is being presented, this entire topic, is to shift our focus, shift our values away from the various activities and pursuits that dominate our mind so, and rather have our focus on what is actually meaningful, not all these transient pleasures and problems, but rather the cultivation of the Dharma within. So to refocus ourselves in a sustained manner, we need to recognize that our first priority is the cultivation of the Dharma. Nothing is as important as that. The sentence continues with, he said that all other Dharma is brought forth by this understanding. So this term brought forth is the same part as in emerge, the same word as emerge, as in definite emergence. So by having a mind turned towards the Dharma, seeing nothing as important as the Dharma, one starts to let go of what is mundane, what has no real value. And in this way starts to let go of samsara in its entirety and wants to definitely emerge from the suffering realms of samsara, which is normally translated as renunciation. So bringing forth here should be understood to our mind turning away from the supposed delights of samsara to wanting to emerge from these suffering realms and attain liberation or even enlightenment. All of this becomes achievable for us by cultivating the topic presented here.
데네 용구이자 베베 제 베버 자오 세도 지산 된주 된 차와다 대 안에 유고네 니가와다 제부고네 니가와다야 배수진의 삼당고래에서 베버 자오 세디송
Having referred to Geshe Thubten, Lama Tsongkhapa concludes by saying, as this is so this is how is the case. What Geshe Thubten is saying here is the actual case. Therefore, you should make an effort accordingly, cultivate this topic well within, and again fulfill the purpose of this life.
And the 제사다 디네기 규고네 삼다 디네기 제 삼다에 데려야 야체 삼다에 동 저기데 디네기 다 규사반의 디우투브리 제사다 규 아니 짐바던 수준다 서바다 준절라 서바 몰란디기 투브네 단지글리든 투브리 디네기 덴데래 냠네 제바이나 다 되니 듬바케나 규리 규사반의 디우투브로 와체 좋아다 디네기 다 윤제요네 삼다베네 다 규디 사반의 디우디 규마 상황에 뭐 줍사나 제보도 가토야메가 제보도 중용을 해야 지라데 디용고레스 제가 디네나 디나지 양치가 덴데고 섬다면은 야 제부게 규직 두번에 될라 덴네 제부지 용고로 와서 제가 덴네 두고 현실에 떼서데 메나 덴네 요사메르 와 제가 디네에서 규 가성한 주게 삼로나야 삼로나라야 단주게 된지 단주 리딘 된체와 이마 삼다 디규고네 니가와 삼다 제부고네 니가와 이마 삼다야도 근데 될라 떼네 근데 가려운 거라서네 다디 짜침부진자 될야 냠는 제호도 선배 되니기 좀 봐시 내용 거래서 진짜 되니 좀 봐 될라 떼네 아니 냠는 제용 거래서 냠는 제발라 떼네 아니 냠는 좀 봐 똑바디 유리 제용 거래서 디게 발라 떼네 아니 녀모 봐봐 방제 땡이 되어가지고 톱토를 해야지. 그 땡제고네 삼다야다. 윤제고네 삼다야다. 안데네 나리 디나지 손바나시 당한저 규고네 삼제고네 삼다세. 데니게 초망고네 삼다네 되지. 원도 손바나네 나소유고네 삼다베네 셈려야. 안지 냠내지에게 듬바디게 안지게 수치 용고래 해야지. 원도 신 손하나시르와다.
When well educated in the Dharma, reading something like this, when one come to recognize that this section here is presenting that it's talking about causes and effects. From causes follow effects. If those causes are accumulated, the result is certain to follow. If a result is desired, it will only be attained independence on accumulating those specific causes. So here one's mind turns towards the topics of cause and effect and dependence arising, recognizing that this rebirth that has been achieved came about in dependence on causes. And if those causes are accumulated again, a similar rebirth will be achieved. So therefore, wanting further excellent rebirths, I must accumulate the causes of ethical restraint, generosity, patience, joyous perseverance, and make prayers. This is indispensable because I want that result, and it comes from these causes. Therefore, as I've seen here, these causes are difficult to attain. I must then make concerted effort to accumulate them, and I need to turn away from contrary causes, those which are unwholesome. Cause and effect here comes to mind and turns us away from what is unwholesome and rather encourages us to focus on what's wholesome. Moreover, with one's understanding of dependence arising, one understands that because results come about in dependence on causes, causes have a result. In other words, cause and effect is possible because of dependence arising. Neither causes nor effects can be inherently existent, otherwise they could not have an interdependent relationship. Therefore, I need to recognize that all that is contrary to these wholesome causes are those that are influenced by the afflictions. It's these afflictions that lead to otherwise pure ethics being tainted, or prayers being not stainless. So therefore, I need to turn away from my afflictions and rather ensure that my motivation is pure of or free of the afflictions. In this way, based on your prior study of cause and effect and dependence arising, when hearing teachings on precious human rebirth, your mind is turned towards the more profound topics of the Dharma, and the wish for liberation and enlightenment will follow.
다 돈다 닝보 등은 저기 당 저기 냠는 지에 소소 섬다데 대시 쇼가 바나 다래 당 저기 류된데 다저 류디 셈바 다 된del이야 안식 제타바 담지 캠피 고당 먼저 고방가를 주는 냠는 지에 두여 된 캬바지 자침부 쉬우지 삼del이야 안 자침부터 되네야 가하고 아니 되네자디 드링 된del이야에 안 되네기 두투여 된 캬바지 될이야 미디 개회 냠는 지강도도 지인 선배다 돈이 뒷바지에디 디게디레 조디 아주 개화야디 냠는제디레 제산 디니기 용야래야다 김제 멍부 삼다데 마오디지 김제 시에디 차산디 디 삼로도 용야기 돈달이 시오르데 제산 당도 두신의 삼다 디니기 삼다지 저기 다 돈달라 니 류된 다주 류디 제산다 디니기 된del이야 냠는제네 시우주 투고를 제상이 냠는지 선배게 듬바 되냐기 냠는지 되냐기 듬바 해야 되래 도시는 삼당고래서 더 좋은 디레 디네 자다 디네기 토네 소소라라기 쇼베셰 바나지 소소기 디네기 주제하러 고업하고도 베스 야보리 선배게 소소소라리아 안지게 뽑아기야다 랑게 제바들 냐마 제바들이야 내 가와고미야 마음반에 무지지긴 선배게 안지 되냐기 도시는 삼다디 도시는 디레 아주 가산디 디레시하게 당은 삼다디 디레다.
The essence of what we've looked at in this chapter was presented by these 4 or 3 points that we looked at this morning. Recognize that we've each achieved this precious human rebirth. We have all these freedoms and endowments, and with this comes a remarkable opportunity with so much potential. And this potential is something that each and every one of us has the capacity to fulfill. It's not beyond our capacity at all. We can achieve what would otherwise be seen as remarkable. It is within our hands. It is not beyond us. And the time to do so needs to be now. There is no valid reason to delay. There's no reason to continue thinking that there is time. Now is the time to transform my mind. By reflecting in reliance on the many reasons that are presented here, the determination will arise in an ever more sustained and transformative manner to strive with what's left of this life, to turn away from what has no value and rather embrace what has lasting value. As one starts to think like this ever more, one's mind becomes light and joyous, and one will with ease strive to live a life of great meaning. So thank you then. We can conclude there for this weekend. But if you have some questions, then feel free to ask. Then thank you very much.